section. And I'm always against spending term value money on somebody else's land. But the end result of this is it's term value residents, Black Diamond residents, and visitors that use this, use it a lot. So that's a good point. I really think if we were to talk to our brothers and sisters in Black Diamond at a town meeting, that might change the attitude of, I guess, in their administration not to be involved.
Hold on, we got Councillor Holiday first, and then we'll go Councillor.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify on the costs. 223 meters costing $56,000. When we were talking about paving Dunham, we were into like the $1 million. And I'm just wondering, like, this sounds much more reasonable than that for quite a large stretch.
It's a great question. I asked the same one during our agenda meeting. I'll have CAO Sharp respond to it.
Sure. Quite simply, this is to a trail standard. Dunham Lane is being built to a road standard, so there's much more work in compaction and the thickness of the preparation of the earthwork before you pave it. That's the major difference.
Councillor.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think it's a great one. And it is kind of a crappy trail when it's mucky and wet and icy and stuff like that. I understand that. But I was hoping that there'd be some kind of joint sharing of the project. So I could support Councillor Wilkie's suggestion or motion to kick it to the Parks Board, and hopefully it will come back to us another time if they think it's a priority, or if they say it's second or third or fourth priority. That makes a difference to me too. So I think going to the Parks Board is not a bad suggestion.
If I may, Mayor Crane, I should clarify. When we did not formally ask Black Diamond in a letter from one administration or one council to another, this was operating staff speaking to operating staff.
Okay.
So I think your approach to possibly putting it on a FAM agenda and having a conversation there is a good one.
Yep.
I like both, actually. Go ahead, Wilkie.
I was just going to say, I think there's two separate questions here. One is where ultimately any portion that we pay is going to have to, I mean, it's a parks and recreation kind of priority, so I think we should get a feel for where that sits in the list. But yeah, cost sharing is to me a separate question, but both have to be answered. So
I mean, if you guys do the grunt work and the grunt work's done, then it's just a matter of figuring out cash. And of course, there's lots more partners in there as well. So I think, you know, if we get some tread on this, then you keep on working that angle. Councillor.
Following up from what Councillor Hamilton said, if the Parks and Rec are merging and they're going to have a joint meeting, maybe that would be a time for the Parks and Rec to discuss it with their conspirators.
Lots of partnerships here. Yeah, good. Your motion, sir, if you'd like to repeat it.
That council refer this report for discussion at Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting and in joint discussion with the Black Diamond Parks and Recreation Committee. Something to that effect.
I
was just going to say,
and
you could, if you could add it as an agenda item to FEM.
Those are two different motions. Do you make a friendly amendment to the next Parks and Rec?
Yep.
Yeah, it's one this week.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
You can still get it in the agenda?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll do the FAM one as a separate one from there. So we'll keep yours straight for Parks and Rec only. Okay. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Right on.
Good. And you can use all that background information for Parks and Rec.
Yep.
Councillor Waring.
Motion to add this topic to the next meeting for discussion with the Black Diamond Council.
Perfect. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Beaton, for being on the line. You can release him if you wish, Mr. Sharp, or you can make his eyes bleed and make him sit here the whole time. Going to move on to 7.3, Corinne Middleton, Finance and Corporate Services Staff Report, Tax Penalties. Tax Penalties Arrears Report to Council. Mr. Sharp, floor is yours.
Thanks, Mayor Crane. I will defer to Ms. Middleton on this one.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. So I just wanted to debrief a little bit about this report. So on October 5th, Councillor Wilkie made a motion to put forward for administration to prepare a report that looked at what our arrears are, what our penalties are, and try and establish a bit of a trend as to whether this might be related to COVID or to some of the other economic circumstances that have been going on in Alberta and in the community for a period of time. So originally we took a report to the Finance Advisory Committee, and it really looked at the current year and no real established trends. So it was requested by the Finance Advisory Committee to bring it back to and present to council with a little bit of perhaps some visual and a little bit of trend analysis to establish if there is, in fact, any kind of correlation with what's been going on in the economy and the outstanding tax penalty and tax arrears that we have. So what I did was, if you go to the chart on the second page of the report, I took what the property taxes were outstanding from 2015 to 2020, and I looked at a particular point in time, which was the end of the year. And then I also gathered what the penalties were cumulative, because how our penalty program works is at the end of December of each year, we will charge a penalty that's cumulative on all of the taxes outstanding. And then in July, when we do another penalty, that only takes into account the current year taxes. So I put this on a graph to get a kind of a visual perspective as to whether there is any kind of a correlation. And from what I can see here, I didn't get any kind of particular trends out of it. From year to year, taxes in 2017 were down the outstanding amount. In 18, it went up. In 19, it went down. In 20, it's a little bit up. And we won't really know the full impact of what 2020 looks like really until the end of the year, because this is at a particular point in time. So I'm not sure that we gained anything. And I would suspect that if we're going to make any kind of conclusions about what COVID and what the impact has been, administration might recommend that we bring this back at the end of the year, and we would maybe be able to get a full perspective to the end of 2020. So this is the report that we've put together. The numbers are included on page number 3 for council's information. I'll take any questions.
Councillor Wilkie.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ms. Middleton. Appreciate the additional information. This is really helpful. Just to clarify, so the 2020 number, there would be an additional round of penalties at year-end 2020, I guess. So that would add to this number, but there may also be some catch-up between now and then, I guess. So we don't really know how that's going to look until we get forward in time a little bit. Okay. I saw you nodding. I'm assuming that's correct. So I'll go with that. Okay, very helpful. It's less of an impact than I expected, but I think I can agree with your suggestion that it's something that we monitor, and obviously the next change would be coming at year end. So appreciate the additional information.
Okay, I have Councillor Gordon and Councillor Ware.
Yeah, a question for administration, if I may, through the chair. When there are tax penalties and tax arrears, what kind of time frame do we give our residents or businesses as far as how far back, how many years removed are they allowed to have taxes due in arrears? And what is the process then from an administrative perspective on the negative side, should those tax arrears not be made up, what kind of time frame are we looking at with penalties and options that we don't like talking about, but what's mandated from a government perspective?
So to answer your question, Councillor Gordon, through the mayor. So if you look on the first page, you'll get a bit of a perspective. So once a resident has property taxes over 3 years, that starts to be quite a serious matter. So we use a third party as soon as a resident really gets beyond 2 years, and we are mandated by the MGA on a number of fronts to make sure that we are very transparent on how we go about dealing with those residents when they get into arrears that go beyond 2 years. So beyond 3 years is usually when things start to get quite serious, but we really try and to remain kind of arm's length, and we do we engage with a third party, and they will step in and help us and assist us with collection. We do whatever we can with the resident to try and set up some sort of plan. We just encourage them to communicate with us.
Thank you.
Councillor Waring?
Yeah, Corinne, thank you for this report, but I would appreciate it, please, if you could give us some more information on this first chart, the one that starts off number of roll numbers, the 76 and the 6, what they refer to, and also it says, say, current is 207,000 and outstanding is 312,000. How is that sort of put together, please? Because I don't really understand it.
So to answer your question through the mayor, Councillor Waring, so that first chart, it sums up currently what we have outstanding. So we have 76 rolls that are currently sitting outstanding. Of those, 206 are current because they are on either the TIPS program or the payment program through their financial institution. So they're currently making those payments monthly. On the second line, we have the number of roll numbers as 6. Those are the roll numbers and the residents that were signed up for our deferral plan. So we've kept them a little bit separate because at July 15th, those residents were not charged any kind of penalty because they had signed up and were in the deferral program. So what you see there is the current year as of October the 7th. So because it's an accounts receivable account, we're always usually tracking it at a point in time. It's dynamic, it's changing. Residents come in and they pay. So this first chart is at October 7th. That's the initial information we took to the Finance Advisory Committee.
Okay, just one follow-up. So why does 206,000, which is current, 106,000 lower than what the outstanding amount is?
Because you add up for the other years, eh? 206 for the current, 1 year, another 85, 2 years for the 12.
Current.
I know, but if you add the current.
I would have thought that those split down would have made the 206, not 300.
So
no, the current is 206, I think, but you add the 206 plus the 1 year plus the 2 year plus the 4,000 plus, and that gives you the total outstanding. Is that not right?
I can see that, but it doesn't make sense to me.
Oh.
To me,
You are
today.
So-
312,000.
Current means this calendar year.
So just to address your question through the mayor, Councillor Waring, so think about it as like an aging report. So in the aging report, the current year, taxes are generally due June 30th, but what happens is we have residents that will pay throughout the year so that they finish paying their taxes. They go on a 12-month payment plan. So they remain current because we haven't billed for the next year's taxes yet. So what we have is we have a current amount, and then 1 year would represent those residents that have not paid their 2019 taxes. 2 years would be those residents that haven't paid their 2018 taxes, and then so forth. And so we provided an aging report that just provides a perspective of the 336,000 that's outstanding. This is how it's essentially laid out and what is outstanding by year.
Thank you. I now understand it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Alday?
Yeah, thanks, Corinne, for adding that extra graph. I just had one question, though, about it, because in the first chart, we have the 336,000 that's outstanding on October 7th, which is the same in the chart, the graph that got added on the next page. We're using that as the 2020 number, but all of the other years are at January 1st. I'm just wondering if maybe when we bring this back, if we should update for January 1st, 2020, and then...
Yeah, you're correct. I think it would just give us a bit of, at least we'd be comparing apples to apples. So totally agree that when we come back with it, we'll bring it for the end of the start of the next year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Just one more question Councillor Hamilton has, and we're good. Okay, we're good. Yeah. Councillor Gordon makes a motion to accept his information. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Middleton.
You're welcome.
Again, I think you may be done for this evening as well. Is that right, Mr. Sharp? She can sign off?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. All right, there you go. Okay, moving on. Administrative responses, we have no items. Administrative inquiries, we have Councillor Wilkie. Councillor Wilkie, if you want to read off your notice of motion, whatever you wish, or you can just...
No, it was my admin inquiry.
You got your question, yes.
Yeah, so my inquiry was, can you please advise if forgiveness of tax penalties, i.e. not the balances outstanding incurred on 2020 property tax arrears, might qualify for funding under the MOST, Federal Provincial Grant Program that we're hearing more about lately. Just flew out of the discussion at Finance Advisory Committee, so.
Sure. Okay. You take that one away, or can you answer it tonight?
I'm going to have to take it away with an explanation. We're having a difficult time getting that type of granularity on the program. So the best answer we've been able to get is if you could demonstrate that the added expense or the lost revenue is attributable to COVID, then we'll hear your argument when it's time to file your report. So we'll continue to try to check in with other munis to see if maybe they've had similar questions. I'm sure we're not the only ones who would like to look against this, but for now, Councillor Wilkie, it's been really difficult to get that out.
Okay, understood. Yeah, it's a new program. It just was in the back of my mind of levers that we might be able to pull in this year. So, okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. 9.2, we have Councillor Hamilton, our Sheep River Library.
Yeah, I just had a question for administration. I'm wondering if you've had any conversations with the library regarding our 2020 requisition and the closure of 3 months due to COVID-19.
So we have not had any discussion. I think what you're implying is if they were closed for a portion of the year, then maybe we might get a refund on our requisition. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming. We have not asked that question. We haven't been directed to ask that question. It's quite sensitive, but certainly it is something that has occurred to us. We don't really know what the expenses have that the library has had during COVID and during their shutdown, but we do know that the library's requisition for 2021 is likely to come in a little bit less than it did in 2020. So we don't know if that's a reflection of their carrying forward some of the money we gave them from 2020 into 21 or an adjustment of programs. But if council would like us to look more closely at that and speak to their administration, we'd be happy to.
As a follow-up, I think that this year, especially, we've got the message from the province, fiscal reckoning. We're hearing those words a lot. And while the library is very beloved and very close to everyone's heart, I think that if we can be having these kinds of discussions with our partners and seeing if there's some kind of a rebate that can be applied to the town for the 2020 year, based on, I guess, the library being closed for what was a quarter of their annual year. So I don't know if, Barry, if you want to take that back to the library board, or if we want to have administration have that conversation, but I think it's definitely one worth having.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. Our next meeting, we will adopt the budget minutes, and you can see some of the relevant information at that time. So I won't divulge that now because it's not adopted minutes yet, but we did have a quarter last year where we shut down due to COVID. So maybe there's some monies that can be pulled back from the programs that are being offered. I think you're totally correct. There should be a broader conversation between our intermunicipal partners and the library and what that looks like. And we can totally bring that forward to the library board. I think maybe you should make a motion to the effect of what it is we want to capture so that we can have that conversation with the board. Now, annually, we usually during budget time invite the library to present. That would be the next step once we adopt those minutes. So maybe 1 month's time, you're going to see them here in front of us anyway. But we can start that conversation early, give them as much heads up to some of the questions and concerns that we have, and we can bring that to that next library board meeting and have a hash session as well, and maybe make this process a little more smooth. So when they come, we've got a good conversation. And Todd, any help your administration can give to feather that process would be perfect. So.
Well, their delegation is typically regarding the new budget, which would be 2021. This is specifically, I think, talking to the 2020 budget and the closure from March to June. So, and I understand that they probably still had expenses to incur, but maybe I'm not sure if there's been discussions if they've looked at that, so I can definitely make a motion. I'm just wondering if you want to do it on a board level or if it should be on an administrative level. I'm kind of looking for that guidance from you and Mr. Sharp.
Your thoughts, Mr. Sharp? Administration first.
Happy to make a phone call. Happy, absolutely. But certainly, I mean, if it's a board decision or information, I guess Mayor Crane's the council rep on that board, and we can maybe work on it from both ends. But administrator, so we can give Jan a call, administrator to administrator, and let them know that council's looking at that. I think that when they come and present as a delegation, that would be the perfect opportunity to ask them the question. But we won't blindside them with that. We'll give them a heads up that question may come. And that's the clarity that I want. Make sure we give them a huge heads up of some of our concerns, some of the questions we might ask, so they can have some details. So, would you like a motion then for administration to speak with the administration of the library regarding the 2020 requisition and the closure period from COVID? That works.
Okay. Just what you said.
We'll just give Heather a chance to scratch that out.
Council directs administration to contact the library administration regarding 2020 requisition and effective
COVID or and the closure of 3 months due to COVID-19 and the effects of on the requisition.
So maybe just for clarity, the simple question is the direct administration to ask the library whether they need the full requisition for 2020 due to the closure of the facility for a part of the year due to COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's helpful.
It's going to be a large conversation. Feel that. Are we good on that? Would you like to read it back once more? What side of it?
To direct the administration to speak with the library representatives regarding whether they need the full amount of their requisition for 2020 due to the fact that the facility was closed for part of the year.
Perfect. That is the motion we're going to be voting on. Okay. Any further discussion on that? Again, we get them here as a delegation. We can ask these more detailed questions, but this is a starter conversation that we're asking the administration to do. So,
one point of clarity: you guys haven't had that discussion yet. The Foothills Library Board has not had that discussion
the
yet.
board has had conversation, but they're not adopted minutes yet, so I can't speak.
Oh, okay. So they have that discussion. Okay. If they've already discussed it, that's good. Yeah. Thank you.
All in favor? All right. Thank you. All right, we can carry that report. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hamilton, for bringing that report. Bylaws policies, 10.1, we have no items. Notice of motion, 11.1, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you. There's a whole bunch of whereases and whenceforths, which you guys can all read when you have time. The gist of it is, we've got some great little businesses in town, and not so little businesses in town that are doing a great job of promoting our town. But one thing that's always been a bit of a sore point for me is some of the underdevelopment that we see on Main Street. So specifically, the idea here is to try to incentivize some development on Main Street on some of those empty lots. I think that is the approach that works the best, is incentivizing, try to get somebody to develop now to avoid missing out on potential incentives at some point down the road. So I'll just, the actual resolution is to direct council to prepare a report, direct administration to prepare a report on potential property tax incentives covering the period from 2021 until some point in the future that could foster development of vacant or underdeveloped properties on Main Street. The report would evaluate the feasibility of providing property tax credits such that any property that undergoes new development would pay taxes no higher than would have been due on vacant land until some point in time, to incentivize investment in the near term to maximize the value of such credits. In addition, the report should highlight any other potential tax programs to incentivize new development on Main Street and should focus on options that do not reduce the current tax revenue from such underdeveloped properties. This report should comment on any legal issues associated with such programs and will be presented to the Finance Advisory Committee for comment prior to presentation to Council no later than the second regular meeting in February. The motion will come back on November 2nd, 2020. Okay, February. Sooner is better. We can discuss that next meeting. Oh,
2021.
2021, there you go.
So there'll be one. I know we don't speak to the motion or notice, but I have to congratulate Councillor Wilkie. A record 8 whereases.
I don't know if it's a record. I think my last month might have had more than that.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah.
8 times, yeah.
I just make a comment. I believe this has been done elsewhere, and I believe it was done successfully. So look forward to seeing a report.
Look forward to discussing.
Thank you for bringing forward that notice of motion, and we will see that as you stay here November 2nd, and then moving it forward. All right, thank you. And that one is done. 12.1, old business, the Q3 financial report. Ms. Holiday or Ms. Middleton? Rock, paper, scissors. Winner takes the floor. Chair Holiday, you can have the floor.
excuse me.
Okay. Yeah, this is just quarter 3 financial report, same format as usual, laid out with most of the issues are of course due to timing of when bills have been coming in. And sorry, I'm just scrolling through it. I wasn't quite expecting to do this. So
You can hand it off to Middleton, that's fine.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, let's do that, because I already got, Gordon has already got some questions, so,
Yeah.
why don't we go to Gordon?
Yeah, if you could just clarify for me, on the top of page 2, we have the economic development amount, where it's listing 49,783 as unfavorable.
Yeah.
When we've only, is it because we've only spent 216?
No.
I'm not sure what I'm reading there.
Yeah, this is revenue in, so we're expecting Black Diamond to fund us when this gets hired, and because that isn't being done right yet, we don't have the revenue. We're not asking Black Diamond for the revenue since we're not hiring this position quite yet. So,
Okay. So that unfavorable speaks just to revenue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Position yet, so that's totally a timing issue.
Your sound is just breaking in and breaking out there, Councillor Holiday, so, we'll just have you speak a little slower maybe, and just give it a bit of time just to
Well, we got all my speaker cord. That might help.
Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. Okay, any further questions, or we'll just let Middleton make a small presentation and away we go? Okay, Todd? Yes.
Mayor Crane, just to let Ms. Middleton off the hook a little bit here. The information is there in front of you, so without running through all the puts and takes, maybe we would just open it up to council to see if they have any questions.
Councillor Wilkie?
I did want to highlight one other thing, which was just on page. It's really hard for me to see page numbers on the printout. Anyway, it's the page that says breakdown by business unit COVID impact. So I would just draw people's attention to that. Is that page 9? Okay, perfect. That just pulls together what the impact or the expected impact to date or through year end 2020 is going to be of COVID, both on the revenue and the expense side of things. So that was helpful information to get. Ultimately our revenue is down by more than our expenses are down at this point in time. So that's kind of, I think, what it all came down to. And Ms. Middleton can correct me if I'm characterizing that wrong, but it was helpful to get that information. And obviously that's still an evolving picture. So just wanted to highlight that.
Okay. Councillor Hamilton, Deputy Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you. Looking at the same breakdown by business unit COVID impact, that's $68,000. Is that the amount that we would be looking to use that new grant for to cover that difference? And then my next question would be, and I know it's not directly related to the quarterly report, this extends into 2021, but are there like additional costs that we've allocated for the first quarter of 2021 for that grant as well?
I'll take that one for you.
For sure.
So through the mayor, so that's just reflective of what we anticipate up till the end of 2020.
Okay.
So if we have this is things long being over. So if we have additional expenses in Q1 2021, we can put this money towards it, but we haven't captured those yet in this report. So that would come in the form of some version of Q1 2021 here. So this is just to the end of the year.
Still a little bit of room to build.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, the other thing I probably should point out that I think Councillor Hamilton will be happy is on the RFQ progress report, the last page. We're getting a huge number of bidders on everything that we're putting out to tender, which is fantastic to see. And then urban systems, a land use bylaw, update, and it came in at, I think, a better than expected price. So that was lovely to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good.
Mayor Crane, I can comment on that one.
Sure.
Now, we couldn't last week because we hadn't awarded the contract, but we've had a startup meeting with Urban Systems on the land use bylaw, and the amount that would read in here in the next go around would be in and around the $40,000. I don't have the precise number in front of me, but the contract was designed for about $40,000. So substantial savings from what we thought the maximum upset could be. But that's in large part to Michelle Willette, our new director, doing a good job of determining what we can do in-house and what we need to farm out. So that should be a pretty accurate number moving forward.
Okay. Waring, were you good? You're good? Then I'll take your motion to accept the information.
Certainly.
Excellent. No further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. All right. New business. Community Support Fund, Sheep Creek Art Council Fee Subsidy Program. I love these guys. I'll just make that motion. No, I'll let you actually speak to it first. I assume Ms. LeBlanc is on the line, so
yeah,
we can just hand it over to her. Sure. Ms. LeBlanc, why don't you do us the pleasure of presenting this application, and we will take it from there.
Good evening, Mayor Crane and Council. It's a pleasure to be able to present this community support grant application to you this evening. Over the years, I've been familiar with this particular group, and I have to say that they are one of the hardest working volunteer groups that I've had the pleasure of working with. And they have had to not only pivot, but do a complete 180 in terms of still being able to provide the services and the programs that they do while adhering to all of the COVID restrictions. They've had a tremendous demand, but they also found that they were able to provide a service for those that really needed a little bit of contact, and yet they were in an isolated position. Their situation briefly was that they had depended on casino funds that typically come in. They sort of lost the luck of the draw in that it was early in the year, so it was fortunate that the casinos were still operating. However, the total take wasn't very large, so in general, they found themselves in a long-term deficit position of nearly $15,000. That included one of their largest fundraisers, which is the Rhubarb Tea, and of course that operates in conjunction with Discovery Day, which of course was canceled this year. So they're not looking for operating funds. What they've done is they've been very good savers. They are hoping, though, to be able to include that marginal group that is very interested in participating in a recreation or a cultural program, but quite frankly unable to afford it, even though the fees are very reasonable. So what they've done is shifted and adjusted their program, eliminating what was some scholarships and putting that into instead a subsidized program, very similar if you recall some of the FCSS programs that we do, and being able to offer discounted registration for those who are unable to afford it but really do need and want to participate. So they could they seem to sell out in all of their classes. They've managed to pivot to virtual. They do still need to make some changes, but are managing that as well as in person with the distancing and gathering regulations that are being adhered to. And with this particular grant, should it be approved, then it will allow them to take it that next step and offer it to those that are really quite vulnerable in our in our community. They work with partner organizations such as the Okotoks Family Resource Center. And you may recall that FCSS is a partner with that group because they will very confidentially and professionally offer the screening process that's required to be able to identify those that are in need and truly deserving of any kind of a discount. So I present to you this evening on their behalf this application request for $500 to be able to help support that particular program. And I open it up through the mayor for any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Robb.
I'd be glad to give you that motion that council approve the sponsorship of the Sheep Creek's Art Council support grant for the amount of $500.
Thank you. Any comments, concerns? All in favor? There you go. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you for that, Councillor Robb. Thank you, Mr. Blunt.
Thanks, Mr. LeBlanc.
Okay, moving on then. ATCO Gas franchise agreement. Scroll up here. There we go. And RFD. Mr. Sharp, take it away.
So, Council, before you tonight is the first of two requests for decision regarding franchise fees. The first is around ATCO Natural Gas. In summary, franchise fees or local access agreements are agreements with utility companies that require them to pay a levy, if you will, for their ability to operate within town, for the building of their infrastructure, for what I'll call the sterilization of the land, if you will, and truly, I guess ultimately does give them the privilege of providing the service to our residents. At times, the franchise fee is increased or decreased depending on council's priorities, and is a source of revenue for council in the day-to-day operational budget. The last time that the ATCO agreement was changed was in June of 2015, where the franchise fee was increased from 10% to 15%, which equates in 2020 estimated numbers to be about $93,000 in revenue. To be clear, this fee is charged to ATCO or any other utility company operating in the boundaries of our municipality, but it is a flow-through charge, so it typically then goes on to the resident's utility bill. So as the administration is looking to push and pull all the levers possible as we enter into our what appears to be our fifth year of a recession, and because our franchise fees have not been increased since 2015, administration is recommending a 1% increase in franchise fee. This equates to about $7,000 in revenue, or about 42 cents per household per month, or bi-monthly. Excuse me, 42 cents per household monthly. So that one is there for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. All right, Council. So this is a direct franchise fee cost. This comes back as a revenue stream for Council's operations through the town. Here, 5 years without any adjustment. We're looking at a 1% increase this year, a total of $7,000 and change in total. Councillor Waring?
So basically, this is the cost that's passed down to the individual unit owners in the town to basically subsidise the property tax. And from the point of view of user pay, this is in my opinion, a much fairer way to get money out of people than property taxes. So if there was an increase in this that led to a decrease in the property tax, I'd be very happy with that.
Councillor Hamilton, Deputy Mayor. Wilkie, then Deputy Mayor Hamilton.
fair. We haven't increased the percent that we're charging, but the distribution costs for ATCO have increased. So that's like saying we're taking the same percentage, but we're growing year over year. Anyway, I don't buy that argument. The way that these are set is a complete black box to me. I do not understand it. So in my mind, the perspective has to be to do it competitively with other communities, I think. If we're to set it significantly below other communities, I think that we're placing an unnecessary burden on property tax, which makes us look worse. I think if we set it unnecessarily above, I think we're kind of fleecing people. So when I look at the range, 15 felt okay with me, but I guess my question to administration, I believe, I'm probably going to jump Councillor Holliday's question here, but our neighbors down the road, if you can let us know 16%. Just what they're doing going forward, though. That's what I'm interested in, is whether there's been, when the decision has been made. So I guess, is this decision being made for next year, for 2021? Is that correct? Okay, and has that decision also been made by Black Diamond already? It has. Okay, so the 16% is flat in Black Diamond next year as well.
They have decided not to make a change for next year.
So 16% will hold next year. Okay. Thank you.
I got Deputy Mayor Hamilton, and I have Councillor Gordon. And then I'll have Cindy. Sorry, Cindy. Just fine.
So these increases in franchise fees, essentially we are just having somebody else collect a tax really for the town. That's what it is. We're looking at a natural gas increase. We're looking at a Fortis increase in franchise fees. We're looking at a utility water increase, and we're looking at a tax increase. I can't support an increase in franchise fees. We are, this province, we're being told by the province that it's fiscal reckoning. Those words are used like all the time when we read the newspaper. And we're no better if we just continue to pass these costs on to our ratepayers and our residents. We need to find a way to do the same or more with less. And I'm not going to be able to support downloading the cost. I think that we should keep them where they are. I do think that having conversations with our neighbors, especially with the amalgamation conversations happening, and we should be on the same page as them. We are fairly close right now. If we leave them the way they are, we're within 1%. So I will not be voting in favor of an increase to franchise fees.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going to go Councillor Gordon and Councillor Holiday.
So we really should put a motion on the table.
Didn't Councillor?
No.
Oh, you just spoke to it.
Yeah. I can make a negative one if you like.
No.
Well, no, you make the motion positive, and then you can vote opposed to it. So I'll make the motion, then I'll speak. Okay. So we'll take the council consider option 2 here, endorsing the ATCO proposed 1% franchise fee with an increase, setting it at 16%, and further direct administration to proceed with notifying ATCO in writing of the approved increase. So speaking to that motion, I have difficulty supporting this motion only because the question I always have when I ever see a franchise fee, it's the percent of what? So it's percent of consumption, correct? So that's a fairly fluid motion. And it's movement, I mean. That's why you can have 15% one year has 93, 15% the next year could have 116, 15% the following year could have X, Y, and Z. So my question for admin is this. Because it's based on consumption, in discussions with ATCO, why do they not set a rate that they would like to see come from the town to supply their service as opposed to consumption? So that way we could cap that rate. And then we can have a real franchise fee for them providing that service to the residents of the town of Turner Valley. I'm wondering what negotiations proceed. What would ATCO be open to? I'm just kind of, I have a hard time supporting such a variable, an ever increasing amount, because that's not true cost recovery.
Okay.
I'm through the mayor. I'm not sure I quite understand Councillor Gordon's question. What is to be negotiated?
Yeah.
What is to be negotiated?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't
A flat rate. So like they set it at, okay, we have 1,150 units that are receiving natural gas, and I presume ATCO would be the major franchise player in the town of Turner Valley. So what amount do they want to see come back for them to be satisfied to meet that commitment to providing our town with natural gas?
Problem is, it's a monopoly, right? There is no competition, right? So we're telling them to pay us an amount for the right for them to have a monopoly, but then they just pass it along to the users anyway.
That's
So
what I said earlier.
yeah.
Exactly. It's a better way for me to raise property tax than it is to charge it on the value of the property.
Because it's based on consumption.
It's based on user pay.
Okay, I'm going to go Councillor Holiday, then Councillor Rapp. No, thank you, Councillor Morgan. I did want you to comment, so that's good. Okay, Councillor Holiday, you have the floor.
Yeah. We talked a little bit of this at Finance Committee, but I've always felt that this franchise fee we should be charging it because we're have an expense somewhere that relates to the revenue that we're trying to generate from it. It makes sense to me, and I can defend it to a resident that we're charging a franchise fee on their electrical bill, their gas bill, because we're using it to pay for town utilities, the street lights, heating the swim pool, that sort of thing. Right now we're raising about $100,000 more between these two than what we're paying in utilities, or expecting to pay in utilities next year. So we are using it to, in effect, support our operating budget, which I don't 100% agree with. But that's something that would have to be discussed philosophically at another day. But for now, I wouldn't, for the question at hand, I don't support increasing it because we are covering the utilities. And that's what I think this franchise fee should be directed for. And I actually like the property tax method of charging revenue. I think it's fairer than electricity, which is, I don't think, nearly as fair. I agree with.
Sorry, Cindy, you just froze, if you can hear me.
I disagree with. No, sorry.
Yeah, just back up a few seconds and go again.
Yeah, no, I think charging property taxes fair. Those who can afford to pay more and have more expensive property should pay more towards operating budget instead of electricity and heating bills, which are basic necessities. So I don't agree with Councillors Gordon and Waring on their rationale. So.
Thank you. We're going to go Councillor Rapp.
Yeah, when I looked at both the Fortis and the ATCO package, the first thing kind of mind is, well, who pays for this? It's the same taxpayer, Mm-hmm. Instead of coming out of property tax, it comes out of this user fee. And user fee and franchise fees and distribution fees and everything else really stick in my craw, because sometimes you get a higher bill for all the support stuff than you actually pay for what you really use. So that sticks in my craw. So I understand where Councillor Hamilton and Holiday and everybody else that's opposed to this motion are coming from, but I will probably vote in favor of it only because Black Diamond is at 16%, so we could go the same, 16%. But I will be speaking against the one in Fortis because they are still at 10%. That's where we're at, and I'm not prepared to go 2% higher for that. So I could support this one only because Black Diamond is 16%. I will not support the other one.
Okay, we'll get there. I believe everyone's had a go. So I have
a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Administration.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just related to the preliminary budget, and Corinne, maybe you can speak to this, that we've already seen if the revenue amounts are based on the proposed rates as laid out in here, or if they were based on the previous rates.
So to address Councillor Wilkie's question through the mayor, so they were not based on these rates. So we have a small upside, but not significant. And just to give everyone a little bit of background, I know there's a level of frustration with the utilities in general, and RMA and AUMA is starting to get very involved in the costs because just to give everyone a little bit of a heads up, they're going after about a 3.5% increase in the T&D, the rates coming up. And so there is starting to get a little bit of pushback from the municipalities in dealing with the utility companies. But at this point in time, the rates are to some degree with the utility companies. They will be what they will be. They go to the AUC and they get those rates approved. So there is a level of frustration coming out of the municipalities with the charges that are coming in and the rate riders and how they increase quite substantially every year.
Thank you. I'll just have my comment and then we'll have a check. I look at the fluctuation and large swings. You have, some municipalities here as well as 8.8%. And, just to put it in context, $100 bill for my gas, $8 I'm going to pay to the town. They can do what they need to do.
Zero. Some are zero.
Some are, I don't see that one. Oh, there's one at 5. Oh, yes, there's, 0, And there's some up to 35%. That's $35 on the 100. That is a substantial amount. I think we're at a very healthy medium when I look at upwards to 40 other like-sized communities, a little larger, a little smaller. 15 is very, very even ground. I could definitely go to 16. It's a small amount, it's 42 cents a month. It will all add up, yes. But it would align us with Black Diamond, so I wouldn't have a problem with that. But Deputy Mayor Hamilton has a very good point. It's a fiscal reckoning thing, and every little dollar counts. But in this case, I would vote in favor for alignment, and because when I look at the large case study here, we're still very healthily below the average, being much higher. So, anyway, that's just my 2 cents. I think I know how this is going to go, but we're going to see. So, to be clear, the motion was made by Councillor Gordon to follow recommendation 2, which is to increase to 16%. All right, so all in favor?
Sorry, point of procedure.
Oh,
we were just talking about voting procedures. Just so I'm clear,
sure.
If this fails, we can readdress this question through an additional motion at this meeting. Is that correct? Under the current regulations, I just want to make sure that we're not setting this aside for 6 months on procedure basis here. We can vote a different motion should this not prevail.
You cannot simply because the deadline for this was November 15th.
Yeah.
So we can't look at.
So without any direction, it would stay the same. No.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's fine. Okay.
It's like the organizational meeting we set our committees for a year. This one, you have to preempt it, send a letter, yada yada.
Yep. Just wanted to clear. There was a question. It was up in the air.
Yep. You bet. Okay, Cindy, go ahead. Sorry, Councillor Holiday.
Yeah, I just want to make sure so that if this got voted in favor of increasing it, we would then have to be advertising and redoing the bylaw before the deadline, sending out, doing 3 readings.
I'm getting head labs over here, yes.
At which time it could be struck down as well, if anybody changes their mind between now and then.
Correct, you could.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, I can't see Corinne. Is she on here?
Yep.
Did you want to speak to this, Corinne? Ms. Middleton?
Yeah, so Just to address some of the concerns through the mayor, the other thing that we need to consider is we are coming to the end of a hedge that we have on our electricity. So we are currently negotiating with our provider to try and ensure that we get a very reasonable rate. The market has been very volatile. So when we look at whether we're capturing the cost of both our electricity and our natural gas currently with these particular franchise programs, if that's what we intend to use them for. Our electricity, we still have not signed the deal. We're still waiting for the rates to stabilize. So we could see some changes in our rates. We were at 53.68 a kilowatt hour. We're having a hard time finding that in the market right now. So we could see some increases in our utility rates coming into 2021 and we'll probably try and find something that will be a couple of years. So we need to make sure that we consider that when we're looking at the franchise fees.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor, last go ahead.
Just a point of clarification on Ms. Middleton. What you're saying then is our rates could very well go up 3%. If they in fact went up 3% and we maintained our franchise fees at 15, we still would probably get about the same as if the rate stayed the same and when we changed it to 16%. Is that correct? Close.
To address your question through the mayor, I'm trying to do the math in my head as we're having the discussion. It would be close, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said, we're trying to find that happy medium with the rates on the electricity for sure. That's our biggest utility billing. So we've been exploring the market and trying to secure some solid rates.
It might affect our vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. We're all clear on the motion. 1% increase, making it 16. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? Councillor Holiday?
Councillor Holiday, I think she's froze.
Okay.
Her hand went up.
Froze in there, so we didn't see it. Okay.
Are you opposed?
That's opposed. Can you confirm that? That's
opposed.
Okay, so motion is defeated.
Lost.
Unless Councillor Wilkie wants to know.
Oh, no.
Motion defeated.
Done. It's over.
Yeah, but you guys, 1, 2, 3,
4.
3, 4 favor, 4 opposed.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Ms. Middleton. Moving on to 13.3 then, Fortis franchise agreement. Mr. Sharp?
Well,
can you go right into it?
So we have the second of our utility franchise agreements before you tonight. The rationale presented by administration is very much the same. We've been pulling on as many levers as we can to make up what appears to be a projected deficit in 2020. I'll turn it over to you, Mayor. Thanks for discussion.
Okay, thank you. I believe we're going to have a very similar discussion.
I will make the motion that we can discuss it, that council approve the Fortis proposed 12% franchise fees, resulting in a 2% increase, and further directs administration to proceed with notifying Fortis in writing of approved increase. And then I'll speak against it because, as I said earlier, I am not in favor of this one. Even though I made the motion.
Excellent. I have a question. Councillor Gordon first. I'm just trying to catch up on the screen here. Go ahead, Councillor Gordon.
Sure. So going back to the previous question I had about the capping, the background here, why does Fortis introduce a cap? So the third paragraph under our background, the very last sentence says the franchise fee cap is 20%. So what is the rationale? If the administration knows, and I don't want you to put you on the spot. If you don't know, I wouldn't mind having that come back later, because I find that quite unique that one utility would provide or provide an allowance for a cap and another utility wouldn't. And the reason I asked that question, and I brought this up before, and I'm really hesitant to see increases in franchise fees that impact utilities. Having lived in Ontario from 2002 to 2014, where seriously, right now, people are deciding, do they pay for rent or do they pay for utilities? Do they pay for groceries or do they pay for utilities? Because their utilities are just out of control, like crazy out of control. Just when we were living, we were right at the place where our utilities were about 70 to 80% of our mortgage. So I'm just kind of wondering if what we can do to support our residents and give them some assurance moving forward. And one thing that kind of jumped off at me, why does one have a cap and another doesn't? What's the rationale?
I can't answer that, but Ms. Thompson looks like she may have an answer.
I believe there is a cap to ATCO. We just missed it on that,
Okay.
on the RFD. I don't know what their cap is. It might be 35%. I just have to go back and check it. But they're both capped. They're capped by the Alberta Energy Board. So.
Do you have any understanding as to the rationale behind why they would have increased the
The
cap?
Energy Board puts the cap on.
I'll do some
ATCO
research.
do not.
Thank you.
So people don't get ripped off, that's why.
All right, discussion. Councillor Wilkie.
Same as before, I guess, and in this one, the only argument that I saw in favor of the previous one was just to align with Black Diamond. That was the only feasible reason that I could have seen behind it. I don't see that reason here. To me, if we approve this increase, it adds $30,000. That doesn't miraculously solve $30,000 worth of our deficit. We still have the deficit. Whether we take it from utility fees or take it from property taxes, it don't matter at the end of the day. So I'm opposed to this. I do think that we need to have a discussion at FAM about coordinating any movements in these. And I mean, ultimately, part of any negotiation, I think, will be aligning these rates and deciding how that happens. But does that mean us going to them or them coming to us? I think that's all part of the negotiation. So I'm opposed to this for the same reasons as the previous.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Same comments.
Same comments? Yeah, same comments. Obviously, 2% is larger than the last one. You know, it really, to me, it comes down to the world that we're living in is going to be a penny pinching environment, and my household is no different. We're definitely having to do without certain things, and 2% here, 2% there, 3% there, it's all going to add up. So we will have to tighten the belt for the residents, and I will be voting against this one as well. So, if anybody else wants to say anything, now's your time, or I'll just call it back. Okay, all in favor of the motion? All opposed the motion? And that is carried as a defeated motion. Is carried as a defeated motion. It's almost like a Trump statement right there.
It's basically a defeated motion.
It's good and bad. Goodly. It's goodly. Yes. Goodly. It's goodly bad.
But I like it.
Okay. Thank you for sticking that out as well, Ms. Middleton. One more to go, I think. Utility rate bylaw rate review. And Mr. Sharp, you again.
Sure. So while Ms. Middleton's collecting her thoughts here, getting ready to present, just a quick overview for council. So this time last year, we brought basically a rewritten utility bylaw to council that captured a number of things, but one of the takeaways from that period of time is we weren't done. So last year we adjusted the fixed fees in an effort to start to set money aside into reserves for long-term recapitalization of the utility infrastructure. But at that time, we were also clear with council that there were still operating expenses associated with the water, sewer, and stormwater utilities in the operating budget. And at some point, those would have to be brought over to the utility budget themselves, so that all costs and revenues are accurately reflected on the sewer, storm, and water utilities. So So Ms. Middleton's going to take you through a presentation here now. I know there might have been some sticker shock when Councillor first opened it, but it was meant to be a conversation starter about how council, to get some direction from council on how they intend to start to bring the remainder of those costs over from the operating budget and into the utilities. And so our hope is that by this evening, we will have some direction from council in order so that we know what to do as we deliberate 2021 and 2022 operating budgets.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Middleton, over to you if you're ready.
So can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Crane. So I'm going to take you through largely what this presentation is it's just really a high-level recap of the document that is enclosed in the package. So I'll go through this presentation and then I'll open the floor up for discussion. So as reiterated by CAO Mr. Sharp, on last year at this time, or close to near the end of the year, we passed the bylaw utility rates 191098. So, and this bylaw really encompassed some of best practices in industry, and it really moved a lot of what we intended to do in our utility program forward. So it had a capital cost replacement requirement component that was addressed through fixed fees and rates. It recognized the services that are provided by our third parties, which are Struck and West End. It established a stabilization fund that would accommodate any kind of emergency repairs and replacement costs that we could use on an annual basis. And it expanded on some of our existing provisions, promoting best practices with respect to strength sewage and manhole testing requirements. As well, administration and we started to go down that path of operating the utility on a cost recovery basis. So the fixed rates that we established at the end of 2019 saw a slight increase from the previous year. So it went from $66 to $69.51. And those are the three components of the fixed rates, with the intention those fixed rates would be deposited and moved over to reserve account in order to fund our infrastructure based on a formula looking at what our current infrastructure was and the number of years in which we would expect we would have to be starting to replace that infrastructure. And on the consumptive rate side, the current rates were based on taking the actual costs for Struck and West End from the time frame of October 2018 to September 2019 and establishing those rates. And then the bottom component looked at the 12-month total water billed by the town in the cubes. So we used 2018 volumes as the number for the total water billed. And we did that for the water metered rate, and then the wastewater rate, we took the West End, what we paid for West End in the requisition as the top number, and then we used the total water billed as the denominator. So the consumptive rates for 2020 ended up with we had a three-tiered system, and we left the non-residential rates the same. So we established some baselines as far as volumetrics, so 0 to 23 cubes, 23.01 to 45 cubes, and then over 45 cubes, with the expectation with the residential customers that the tiered percentages would be about 59% of those residential customers would be in Tier 1, 35 in Tier 2, and in Tier 3, 27. So that was the rates that we have currently that we established at the start of 2020. So for 2021 proposed rates. So the Schedule I formulas for calculation of rates, the consumptive rates, should be amended to capture full cost recovery for the water meter and the wastewater rates. The fixed rates will remain the same and will be reviewed in 5 years as per the bylaw. So moving forward on the proposed rates for consumptive rates. The 2020 rates do not represent full cost recovery for water and wastewater costs incurred, and therefore adjustments to reflect full cost recovery should be considered. The 12-month total water bill will be based on 2019 actual volumes. It's about 169,000. And that the 12-month total cost for water will have added cost to reflect cost recovery, not only the 12-month total struck costs. On the wastewater side, the expectation is the same. We're going to move to, or we should move to, a full cost recovery. And so it will include not only the 12-month total West End cost, but any additional costs over and above. So what does that look like for rates? So option one, if we went with 2021 full cost recovery, the rate adjustment is, for water metered rate, is 51% increase. So we would go from a middle range, which was about 193 to 292 for water. And for wastewater, it's not quite as substantial of an increase as, because our West End requisition is so large, and that rate would be in the middle of the range, 311, and it was about, I believe, 270. So if we factored that into the average resident that uses around 20 cubes of water bi-monthly, so the average is anywhere between 17 to 20. Timing of the season. So in the summer, there is a tendency to use a little bit more water. So the average increase would be $28.80 bi-monthly. That's for the first option. Under option two, which presented, is phased in over 7 years. So the water meter rates, this would soften the impact for residents, as well as it gives administration a couple of different options that we're looking at to improve our efficiencies in our system. So year one, we would see the middle of the range, so the 23 would be 199. So that's an increase of about 6 cents. And what we would do is we would factor that over a 7-year period. So during that 7-year time frame, each year we would not only look at the rate that we set a number of years ago, but we would look at any blips in inflation, as well as any efficiencies or any substantial changes that we would see in the system or in the billing cycles. We would review that as well. So talking a little bit about option two. So the phased-in consumptive meter rate changes for water and wastewater will have a minimal impact to residents. So this would soften the blow. A phased-in approach would permit utility cost certainty for residents, as well as it allows administration the opportunity to do some long-term planning as far as the operations side of the utility. If annual adjustments were necessary, so if we had some substantial inflationary pressures that really impacted the overall costs, the rates could be amended and will continue to be reviewed on an annual basis. Rate adjustments will be included in the 2021 financial plan multi-year. So we would factor those changes into our budget. The option recommended by Council will be inserted into the utility rate bylaw 19-1098 with the bylaw brought back for approval. The public will be notified through all media sources once the new rates are set in. The utility rates bylaw 19-1098 Schedule 1 would be where you would see those amended changes. Questions?
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sure you're about to get bombarded. So we're going to go to Councillor Waring first, then Councillor Wilkie, then Deputy Mayor Hamilton. Councillor.
Okay, thank you for this, Corinne. Excellent document. Before I was to agree with anything, I would like to see a breakdown of the determination of the actual cubic meter rates and also a breakdown of the fixed amounts. Because I've done some calculating based on West End, knowing West End's numbers and knowing what they pass out back to the town. And I'm a little bit concerned that we are actually putting in a lot more money into the charges than we need to. So without talking about figures at the moment, I would like to see a proper breakdown of how the unit rate is made up and how the fixed rate is made up. Thank you.
Just for clarity for myself, so are you talking the large consumptive number then, or?
Oh,
both?
We take, like West End charges us $403,134 for 2020.
Sure.
And for that, they work it on a volume of 239,289 cubic meters of wastewater.
Sure.
So if you divide one by the other, you get a unit rate, which is approximately $168. Then we have to pay additional 60,000 or so for chemicals, which is an extra 25 cents per cubic meter. So the cost is $1.93. Right. I'd like to know how we go from the $1.93 or whatever that real number is
in reverse
to the number we're charging the residents.
Okay.
Likewise, for the fixed amount, what's it based on? Because I've worked around some numbers on this, and I don't want to say numbers because it might give people the wrong impression.
Right. Does that make sense to Ms. Middleton, what he's asking there?
Yeah, so to address your question, Councillor Waring, through the mayor. So the cost that we have the breakdown of costs, absolutely. The other thing to consider is we're looking at the previous year costs, so 2019 costs. And so the 2019 costs as well as the volumes are based on 2019 volumes as well. So it's all prior year information. It's not 2020 data that we're using, just because we have the accurate numbers in the actuals. So those are the numbers that we're using as far as both volumetrics and the billings. Keeping in mind with both the water and the wastewater, there are additional costs incurred beyond just what we receive from Schruck and for West End. So those costs have now been incorporated into the cost recovery model where they were not previously.
Corinne, I completely understand and appreciate what you're telling us, but I want to see the numbers.
Okay.
Thank you, Corinne. Mr. Wilkie.
3 questions. Maybe I'll go one at a time. Again, and I'm assuming this is an easy question. The budget that we've seen already is based on the old rates. Is that correct, Corinne?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is the increase in utility revenue expected under these new rates versus the previous rates? Do you know what the total increase in utility revenue would be?
So we currently, to address your question through the mayor, we currently have approximately 1,156 residential customers. So if you take that number and you times it by the potential that you're going to have 2,880 bi-monthly over 6 months, because we're billed bi-monthly. So you're looking at approximately 198,000 on the water and wastewater side.
Combined. So that leads me really well to my third question, which is, these are all costs that we're already paying out of our existing budget. Is that correct? Like, this is not, it's not like there's some new cost that we need to fund here. All we're talking about is taking some of the costs that we're funding under general revenue and transferring that to utility billings, essentially. Am I correct?
So to address your question, Yeah, you are correct. So what the expectation is that we are going to do, we're doing a full audit review of the utility itself. And so there's a number of things that we're going to look at. And we've, I think, learned a tremendous amount with the new utility rate bylaw that we have, and some of the areas that we think we can create some efficiencies, which the expectation is that as the years go by, we'll be able to incorporate those back into the budgets.
Okay. And sorry, one last one. I'm trying to identify the difference between the two options that are presented to us. There's option 1, option 2, and maybe I'm not a very good pattern recognizer, so I can't see what the difference is between option 1 and option 2. Can you just make that painfully clear for me?
So to address your question, so option 1 would be essentially passing on that expense or that cost to residents all in at one in 2021. So that would be the increases, full increases would come on in 2021. The option 2 would have that a little bit of a phased in approach over a 7-year time frame. So therefore,
one is phased in, one is all at once. I didn't
yes.
see any difference in the wording. Am I?
Well, what I think, Councillor Wilkie, if you look at option 1 there, it'd be the full, you get nailed with the full amount.
Okay.
So it's a 51% increase on your utility bill for water, and a 17% increase on your utility bill for wastewater.
It wasn't clear to me.
These are the same numbers, but instead of happening in 1 year, it's done over 7 years. And the first year looks like about a 3% hit for everybody, for both water and wastewater.
I wasn't clear on the motion.
I think that's how it goes.
Okay. Thank you for clarification. Debate will be fun.
I've got a couple questions here. So is the amount that we're trying to recover in full cost recovery, that's $198,000 that we still have in our Town of Turner Valley operating budget that should be recovered through our utility rates? That's what we're saying? That there's $200,000? I can't understand what that would be for, because we're no longer operating the utility. I'm not sure how we could allocate $200,000 in salaries and wages into. Yeah, I'm going to need to see a breakdown on that. I can't seem to wrap my head around it. When we did our utility rate review, and maybe I was naive in thinking it, I thought that that's what we were doing with our goal or aim was full cost recovery. So we did a utility rate review. We did a lot of public consultation. We had many presentations in council chambers. We passed a new bylaw in 2020. I think it got third reading in 2020. Here we are in 2020, looking to increase substantially our utility rates by $200,000 that is still in our operating budget that we're saying we need to recover by our utility rates. Something's not making sense to me. So I really would like to see a breakdown on where that $200,000 is in our operating budget, like what we're allocating to utilities in our operating budget. And then my second question is, when we did this utility rate review, when we approved our new bylaw, we were looking at $475,000 that was going to go into reserves to fund capital replacement. Maybe we can't do $475,000 a year into capital replacement costs if we've got another $200,000 in monies that needs to be allocated to the utility out of our operating budget. So maybe do we have discussion on $275,000 going into reserve, and we, transfer that shortfall? Anyway, I'm not even sure if I'm making sense anymore, but that's where I'm kind of My main questions are, I'd like to see a breakdown on what the 198,000 is that is in our operating budget that should be allocated into utilities. That's question number one. And question number two is, if we've got in our current bylaw or in our current budget, 475,000 going into reserve, do we maybe have a discussion on getting that remaining amount out of our operating budget into the utility and have a full cost recovery with 275,000 going to reserve a year instead of 475? Yeah, I think that's I got it out.
There's definitely some. I don't know if you want to comment to that, Ms. Middleton. I've got Councillor Gordon and I've got Councillor Wilkie and I've got CAO Sharp in line.
So through the
Speak on behalf of Councillor Middleton.
Actually, Mr. Sharp's going to field this one, so you're on
Okay.
there.
So we will bring back the numbers.
Okay.
However, two things for you to keep in mind that we are dealing with here. The first is those expenses that are in the operating budget that weren't fully moved over aren't just wages. So now what it is the contracted service amount, for example, who maintains our distribution.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The contracted service that we now have with the county that maintains our distribution system, that would be an example of an expense that's in the budget, but we'll bring those back to you. But one of the other things we're challenged with here, and it was brought up last year, was that we're losing water, and we have and we're gaining sewer. And so through our infiltration studies and through other metering projects that we're doing and an audit we're doing, if you recall, MP and the previous director of infrastructure had said we think it. Don't quote me, but I think he said that number adds up to about a 25% thing between the added value through infiltration or the added volumes through infiltration that we're paying West End for because we're pushing that volume out. And the lost water, meaning the water we're buying from Shruk that we're not billing for at the end. So between those two, that gap is there. And so between the money that we're not billing, the money that we're overpaying because of we're not sure why we have added volumes on the sewer, and the costs that are still in the operating budget, that is what's contributing to this. So we are proceeding, it's not a short exercise, but we're proceeding with an audit to find out where those lost revenues are, i.e. not billing for what we're buying from Shruk, but also the areas where we might be gaining sewage, and that's part of the infrastructure analysis. So one of the reasons we're proposing the scaled in rate is so that we can get started on the recovery and bringing those expenses into the utility, but at the same time, we have some time to get to the bottom of this, whether it's just leaky pipes or we have an area that's using water that we haven't metered, or we have some faulty meters in the community. I mean, currently we're going door to door right now, doing inspections on every meter. So it gives you an example of what we're about to undertake. But the broad punchline is that's why we have $200,000 that needs to be brought over to the rates in order to recover the losses.
Okay. I have follow-up.
Because you're asking my question.
I've got a follow-up, then I've got Gordon, I've got Wilkie, then I'm over to Waring, then I'm over to Rab, and Cindy, I can't see you, so if you do have a comment, why don't you just wait right to the end and make huge scroll of questions. Okay, follow-up question from Deputy Mayor Hamilton first.
Okay, so my follow-up to that would be all of those things that you listed, we knew about those when we did our utility rate review. These are not items that came up a month ago or 2 months ago. So I'm wondering, why are we now 8 months after passing a bylaw? I guess it's a little more than 8 months. We're 10 months after passing a bylaw. Why we're now coming back? We're doing the same thing again that we just did.
So through the mayor, so the bylaw has to be updated annually. The rates have to be presented to council and updated annually.
Right, but so I would understand a little bit of an uptick.
So then the second part of that is we flagged last year, we still had operating costs that had to come across. And we also flagged that we had a delta here between what we're buying and what we're billing. And this is the result of that. So we're not recommending you rip the Band-Aid off and apply a 51% increase here. That's not what we're doing. We're recommending that you direct us to move towards a cost recovery model over a scaled in period of time, and that's what you're seeing here. And we'll provide you with those numbers. We intend to.
Okay, thank you. Gordon.
Yeah, as a follow-up to this discussion, picking up on what Councillor Hamilton has mentioned, when we did the utility rate review where the previous director with the MP engineer sat, and in administration, correct me if I'm remembering this incorrectly, when we questioned that 400,000 plus because the math didn't add up, and that was corrected later to be just over 200,000. They came back, correct me if I'm wrong. So right there, we were in a deficit from the original dollar figures we came through. So what I'd like to see, honestly, is that same presentation with the actual numbers. So now we know if the 25% loss, we can see where it is, because that study's been done. Because that original study was, this is what we believe, and this is what we're estimating it on. So it was a great study. As far as the PowerPoint presentation, you don't need to go back to MPE and say, hey, redo the study. We've got the slide deck. Let's punch in today's numbers, and let's see where the cost recovery is. Because I'm with Councillor Hamilton. I thought that's what we did. I thought that was a cost recovery exercise. And now this is the third utility that we've been asked to increase. And my quick math shows me that every resident, every business was looking at a potential $199.56 increase for the year. 42 cents for ATCO monthly, $1.81 for Fortis monthly, $14.40 for water monthly. Works out to $16.63 times your 12 makes $199.56. I'm not prepared to do that tonight with what I thought was the exercise we did on cost recovery already. So I'm more than willing to reopen the conversation on cost recovery if mistakes were made. I mean, we all make mistakes, correct? So let's get the numbers today. What is cost recovery as we know today? And if we have to revisit it, then we have to revisit it. But I can't do that when I don't have the numbers in front of me.
That's fine. So we're trying to state, or we'll do that. But to be clear, mistakes weren't made. Okay, we corrected the mistake by MP. The mistake was that part of that 450 was already in the operating budget. And you'll recall the reason we undertook this was a notice of motion by Councillor Waring, I believe, that there was a belief that the revenues, the profits, if you will, from the utility were staying on the tax side. Yep. And we needed to get them out of there and make this a full cost recovery operation, and that's how this started. So there were no mistakes made on the part of administration in the numbers, other than we're not putting as much into reserves as we thought. From a cost recovery standpoint, Councillor Gordon, all we dealt with last year was on the capital side. What do we have in the ground? What condition is it in? When's it going to have to be replaced? And what is that? What do we have to collect in order to do that in the normal life cycle of the utility? That was the cost recovery piece we worked on last year. With the remaining operating piece needing to still come in, which is what we're here about today.
So just a quick follow-up. So if it's cost recovery, so are we running a deficit per household of $14.40 per month then, as far as failure to recover true costs?
I'm going to turn that over to Corinne. I believe so. We're recovering it over tax, right?
Yes, we're losing.
Yes.
Yep.
Through the mayor, to address your question, Councillor Gordon, we are currently running a deficit as far as consumptive rates. We have our fixed rates, which we want to put into reserves, are helping to subsidize the consumptive rates. But sorry.
All right.
Carol's are working from home.
Are you there?
I can't tell.
She just stepped away because she shut that deal with the telephone. But she made it clear that yes,
Oh, okay.
So to address your questions regarding the dollars and what the numbers look like, the numbers are strictly based on 2019 actual numbers for water and for wastewater. So that information is easy to obtain. The volumetrics are going to be based on what happened in 2019 and what we billed out to residents. So that's easy to obtain as well. The reality is that the numbers will tell, are the telling tale of the cost recovery requirements. And when the original utility rate bylaw was established in 2019, it only took into account those costs from Shruk and for West End. And we have costs that we incur from the town side to manage those utilities. We still own the distribution within the town limits, and we still do billings every monthly. We still have meter readings that we have to do on a bi-monthly basis. So those are all costs that are still part of the operation of the utility. Unfortunately, it's not just the requisition that we pay to Shruk and to West End. So we are doing an audit, partially because accounting became quite involved at the start of 2020. And so we started to become involved in how billings were being handled, and we were looking at the water consumption, and we knew when we did the bylaw in 2019 that there were water issues and that we were losing water, and we're going to try and become more efficient as a utility. But in the meantime, that might not happen early in 2021, but we could see some improvements going into 2022 and then further on. So it's our mandate from the accounting side that we're going to go through that exercise.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. I've still got a few more here. Can you do me a favor, though? Can you take out that screen, shared screen, so I can see people on the Zoom screen? Swipe.
Done.
There we go. Lovely. I just like looking at all these faces, you know. No, it's perfect. Seems we've got a lineup here. Okay, so I've got Wilkie wearing, I think you're probably happy, Rab, and then Cindy. So, Wilkie.
Are there additional clarifying questions? Because I was going to put a motion on the table to postpone, but if there's additional,
lots of information.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion and then speak to it to postpone this decision, the utility rate review decision, until the next regular council meeting, when administration can return with a detailed breakdown of what is included in the consumptive rates. And then I'm happy to friendly amend to additional information, but in my mind, that's what I need is detailed consumptive rates.
My friendly amendment asks, and I'm going to look at administration here first, potentially, could we have this information so we could include it in our strategic planning session as a little hash-out session? We could have it there and then bring our final product forward. Would we have enough time? It's like a week away.
It's not that. I just don't know if it belongs there.
Yeah.
This is in front of council now, and it belongs in an open public meeting. So we're happy to bring this back on November the 2nd and get you the information.
Okay. You think we'll be good for that?
I'm looking at Corinne. I think she's got the work already. That's how she came up with it. So we should be looking at that.
I think it's like Councillor Gordon said. Let's bring that formula back, punch in the numbers. Okay. Did you get?
Yeah.
Sure. First.
Okay.
Okay. So you still have the floor.
So to speak to that, look, I think we're getting, from what I can read, and I look forward to getting more information here, I think we're getting worked up over thinking that this is $198,000 of additional cost. My understanding of everything that I'm hearing here is that we're paying this $198,000 already. All that administration is proposing to do is to move that amount from general revenue to utilities, which, you know, as long as that's the the actual approach that we're taking, as long as we adjust the budget for that, and the next budget comes back with a $300,000 deficit still, not with a magically $100,000 deficit, then I'm fine with it. And I would actually probably be fine with pulling the Band-Aid and doing it all in one shot, as long as we're seeing the reduction on the taxation side of things, because that's effectively what we're doing, is we're moving money from one bucket to another. And I agree, let's put it in a user pay kind of system, right? And I'm fine with that, but it's not additional revenue. And we'll find out, I guess, when we get more information back. So that's why I'd like to postpone. I'd like to see that additional info.
Absolutely. I'm going to go to Councillor Waring, just to follow up on you right quick. It's the scales of justice. We're just tipping it from here and putting it over here, and that's where it belongs. That's all we're doing. But we need to relay that in a nice, effective communication to the public to say we're not pulling it out of both pockets. We're just taking the same, just over here. Councillor Waring.
2 points to make. First one is to confirm what CEO Todd said in that previous arrangement. The cash flow from utilities was being used to subsidise property tax, which is why we wanted to do a user pay deal. Because the money going into the property tax bucket, then they were taking a certain amount of money out of that to put into reserves. And we had no clue whether that was the right amount, the wrong amount, or whatever. My other point is I've never liked the principle of charging for sewer against water. I also understand it's very, very difficult to come up with a system to measure sewer without having meters on everybody's house. So don't get me wrong on this one. But when we have a 15, 20, 25% error, which we can measure on water being sold to us and water being paid, and we know that, we actually know the volume of sewer because it's measured. I'm frightened that the 25% may be increasing the cost of sewer. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I'd like some clarity around that. So we're not now, but when we start, because if water's 100 and sewer's 150, but you're only getting paid 75 for water, so you increase the rate for water, and then you use the same volumes as used by the people for water, increased and whatever. Does that impact really what we're paying for sewer in the negative way? Now, I could be completely wrong, but I can't get my head around it.
Okay, we can bring that back at that session. That was your 2 points, right?
I have 3. No.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Rab.
Okay.
How could you have a question that hasn't been answered or asked already?
Yeah, well, first of all, I thought we had this issue solved last spring, or when it fall, I guess it was when we did a utility bylaw. But that said, as John said in the past, all the fixed rates, all the fixed costs, plus the consumption rates were all put into revenue, and then Shruk and West End were paid, and the rest of it was subsidizing taxes. So we're in a situation where we want to have the real costs and have that as a utility bill and do taxes separately. I get that. Now, from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, Corinne, the fixed rates that we collect are supposed to be going for our reserve, correct? All the fixed rates, so that's $407,000 the way I calculate it, correct? But meanwhile, we're running at about a $200,000 deficit. I don't know where Lana got the number, I couldn't find it, but a $200,000 deficit in what we're collecting for sewer and water as opposed to what we're paying for sewer and water plus all the other costs, correct? Okay, so, and you're proposing that we have this on a 7-year scale. That makes more sense than hitting somebody with a 51% increase. My question to you, and goes back to what something Deputy Mayor Hamilton said, is maybe we can't afford to put $450,000 in a reserve if we're running a $200,000 deficit in our operating. Okay, I think that's what you more or less said.
But they clarified that to be about half. It's not 475.
No, well, why is it not 475? Because if I do the actual math on that, it's 475. Yes, it is. So anyway, so we need a lot more information, as Councillor Wilkie says, before we can make this decision, I think. And we're probably on the right track, and we certainly want to get that accounted for. But, you know, and we were, you know, we did hear about infiltration being an issue for sewer. And we did hear for some reason about water being lost the time it left Shruck till it got to the houses. I don't know where that can be, because you'd think you'd pick up a leak. I don't know, unless it's pretty slow. Pardon me?
There's always losses.
Yeah, but I mean, it shouldn't be 20. Like he was talking big numbers, I thought, last spring.
I think he said it was something like 10 to 15% is the normal.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm done. My question was, if I do the math if I do the math and take $60, $70 basically, and I multiply that times 6, because that's how much each household pays, and I multiply that by 1,100 businesses, I get $458,000. So why is it only 200? I know Jimmy had that straightened around last year. He figured it out, but it's because
maybe we're not putting 400.
We'll get the math at the next plant.
Yes. So I think I'm done.
Okay, I'm happy we're almost there. Councillor Holiday.
Okay. Thanks. I think everybody's solved most of what I wanted to say. The last couple items. When we saw this last year, I really wanted to see a larger difference between the 3-tier rates to incentivize conservation. I really didn't like that we had the 3 tiers that were so close together. Basically, people would ignore them, I think. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but since we're looking at it, I want to bring it up. I also wondered when we were talking, this might not be related, we have so much problems with overstrength sewage, so wouldn't that get worse if we fix our leaks and our infiltration problems? That's totally not related. I just figure if we're sending less volume because we fix our leaks, then what gets there at the end is going to be even worse. So leaks going to, are we just going to get hit with even worse overstrength?
We're losing you, Cindy. We're losing you, Cindy. You're kind of blacking in and out.
We've got the gist of your question, though. Would the reduction in water create a stronger
sewage
issue?
More overstrength.
And less volume, so therefore it'd be more concentrated. John shakes his head no. But there could be a variety of infiltrations. There could be infiltrations along that line that are adding to it. We don't know.
Can I qualify that?
So, John's going to qualify. Go ahead, John.
When you've got wet months and you've got the sewer systems taking in moisture from outside of the sewer system, then the concentration goes down. The actual water going through the houses, if everybody was using a lot more water and flushing a lot more water, then the concentration of the sewer would reduce. That's a fact. But the losses of water are not really impacting the sewer strength. It's because we're all being so conservative about how much water we use that we could do with extra flushing now and again. And we get this when there's very heavy rainfall. And it's very obvious when you look at the results we get every month in the graph when they've taken the tests. And on very dry months, you can see the concentrations go up high, and on wet months, they go down lower.
Okay. Like I say, we're going to bring this back November 2nd. I think administration has a plethora of questions to answer at this point. So I think we can put this one to bed. We'll take a vote on the motion made by Councillor Wilkie, postpone until November 2nd for further information, et cetera, et cetera. Is that about right, Mr. Wilkie? I think so. Yep. Councillor Holiday, go ahead. Follow up.
I did want to know if any other councillor agreed with me on the 3-tier rates and having a larger spread, and whether we wanted to touch that or not.
Actually, as I recall, we had the 5 and the 3 presented, and council ended up arguing that the 5 different rates was too confusing, and wanted to simplify and align with Okotoks' 3 model.
Yes, but Okotoks has a larger. It's not the number of tiers; it's the difference in cost. There's only a 14-cent difference between tier 1 and tier 3.
That reduce the impact on residents as well. But Councillor Rabb has comments.
I don't believe I supported you on that last year, Cindy, but or Councillor Holiday, but if you look at the shortfall we have in terms of economic, in terms of the money we have for our utilities, perhaps we do have to look at upping the tiers and making a bigger difference. If we raise 3%, for example, the first year, perhaps you raise 5% in the second tier and 7% in the third tier, and that way you're gonna hopefully improve efficiencies like in water use consumption, but still get a few more dollars out of it. That's a possibility. So I'd support you in that, Cindy.
Deputy Mayor Hamilton,
I'm done. Sorry, Lana.
as well.
I think that I'd like to leave the structure the way that it is. And the reason that I say that is a lot of people, usage is determined by how many kids they have, or how many loads of laundry they do, or how many, times are tough. Our water bills are already, I think, prohibitive. The cost of our water is already prohibitive, to the point where people don't want to water lawns, or they don't want to do a lot of things that they would normally do because the cost is so high. So I think by further punishing people who maybe need to use water, especially in a time when the economy is so tight, I don't think I would support that. Our rates on their own are prohibitive. I think that they're prohibitive enough that you're thinking twice before you're using water. I don't think we need to further hit people who are using more water, because they're probably using more water because they have more people living in their home, or more kids, that kind of a thing. So I don't think I think I liked the way that we set it up last year.
Can certainly have admin bring the graph of 5 to the November 2nd.
No, you still stick with 3.
We just want
just a bigger difference between the tiers. Don't change the number of tiers.
Play that.
Yeah.
Just caution, council. So there's no direction, there's no motion on the table.
Throwing it out there.
Respecting, differences of opinion, but the capacity right now for all the extras is very thin as we work through budget. So if we have if you clearly want us to do that work, then we're going to need some direction from council. We're already presenting on the rates.
Did you want to comment then, Councillor Gordon?
Yeah, I don't agree with increasing tiers. It's punitive, and mainly against those families that have larger numbers of people living in their homes or businesses. So I wouldn't agree with that.
Doesn't appear to be any support for looking at that right now, Councillor Holiday, so we'll just move on from there if that's okay with you. Thanks for bringing it forward, though. Consideration. Awesome.
One more comment?
Oh my gosh.
Motion?
And then I'm going to call a vote. Go ahead.
If it was possible, when you put in all these numbers together for our next meeting, if we had a table which indicated, say, for the past 3 or 4 years, the measured volume of water received from Shruk against the actual billed amount of water for each year, and the same with sewer. We know we're going to bill sewer on the volume of the water, but the volume of actual sewer for each of those years as given to the town from West End will give us a much better idea of the relationship in between water and sewer.
Okay. Yeah. We're going to call the question. Any questions like that, any concerns like that, throw it in an email, get it off to administration right away, and then they can look at that. Okay. Councillor Wilkie, thank you for making a motion. All in favor of Councillor Wilkie's motion? That's carried. All opposed? Oh, Cindy, you just froze again. We're carried anyway. We're good. Okay. Thank you for that great discussion, guys. Expression of interest, West End sewage management. Chair Rabb. I believe we could go to you for this one. Let me just go over here again.
No documentation.
Yeah, there's no information, it's just the expression of interest. So,
To make a long story short,
yes, could you?
we have discussed this most recently at our meeting this past week, and it was called GPAC meeting. And basically what the request is West End is looking for administration, management, finances person or people moving forward, as we are probably going to lose our CAO of that group, if that's what you want to call her, for lack of a better term. Anyway, we have opened it up for bids or for expression of interest from the town of Turner Valley and the town of Black Diamond, who are both partners in West End. And we've also asked Foothills County if they'd be interested. So all we're asking for is an expression of interest from council and administration if we're interested in putting in a bid to manage and or administer and financier of West End. Is that sufficient information, sir?
I think so. Everyone clear?
Yep.
Okay. Do we want a straight out, except for information, thank you for the request, or a positive or a negative?
Well, I think they're looking, the West End is looking for a response by the 21st of October, I believe. So all we have to say is yay or nay. So we need a motion, and if you want, I can make
we can't make it negative, right?
I can make a motion if you like.
Yeah, there we go.
That the town of Turner Valley expresses an interest in managing the West End operations going forward. Now, you may wish to speak against that motion, but you got to make a motion in a positive term.
I'll just say I won't be supporting that motion.
You'll not be supporting that motion? Okay.
Mr. Sharp.
Just for clarity, it doesn't have to be a positive outcome to the motion.
No.
You can make a motion, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you can make a motion to direct administration to notify West End that they will not be
Well, that would work too.
expressing or putting a bid. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't. You don't have to do the reverse.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what your intention is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if this motion is defeated, which based on our GPAC conversation, it could very well be defeated, and if that's the case, then the answer is we're not going to put anyone in.
That would be the right.
But it would be probably wiser, as CEO Sharp said, if we would have said, if I would have said,
Pull that one.
Friendly amendment.
Pull that one. No discussion has been
that we recommend to administration that we will not be putting in a letter of interest or an expression of interest to manage West End.
Perfect.
That's still a positive motion.
That's what we want.
Sort of, but anyway, it's good enough. It'll work. Right?
Call it quick. Already been discussed.
All in favor?
So we'll not be
We
pursuing
will
that.
not be proceeding. That's right.
Can I add one thing?
You may, now that we're done.
Would it be possible to get the agenda updated to show the letter in there?
Absolutely. The request letter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, have it in the minutes.
Yep.
I can't have it in the minutes.
No.
I didn't see that.
Make a motion to have it.
Why
in the
can't we have
minutes.
it in the minutes?
They don't get attached, we don't attach anything to minutes.
Okay, well, I'm just thinking that if the public wanted to see the
To
letter
the agenda package.
and the agenda package, it's not there.
I could update the agenda package
Sure.
with the letter.
That'd be good.
Okay, that'll work.
Do you need a motion for that or not? We're good.
All right, good.
Okay.
Wait, don't get up and run away.
No, I'm not. I'm just shifting. I'm just shifting, buddy.
One side.
Okay.
It's a lot of mass on one.
You get that ship swinging, she just don't come back too quick, right?
Did you vote on that?
We did, and that carried. I'm just gonna swing over and make sure I got Cindy in my rearview mirror here. There she
General
is.
correspondence.
Okay, general correspondence, we have no items. Correspondence action considered, we have no items. Committee board correspondence minutes, 16.1 and 16.2. I sit on both of these committees. I will make a motion to adopt the Sheep River Intermunicipal Library meeting minutes from September 10th and the West End Communities meeting minutes, June 23rd, 2020, for information. Any questions regarding either of those minutes? As I said earlier, regarding the library, we'll have some solid discussion obviously coming forward. And,
So there is no discussion in these I was just looking, I couldn't find anything in these minutes.
It's the next set that you're going to.
So it's the next set of minutes.
Yeah, so if I may ask a question on that.
Absolutely.
Because under number 8, the treasurer's report, there's a little bit of an intimation about budget discussions and preliminaries.
Yep.
And how the current administrator advised that they would not be taking any funds out of reserves as a show of good faith. So would I have an understanding that it's still being deliberated as to what the potential savings may be from COVID closure? That hasn't been discussed yet?
You will see in the next set.
Gotcha.
Some of that better information. In the presentation, you can ask all those questions as well. So, absolutely. Okay, thank you guys. All in favor of accepting those minutes for information? And Mr. Rabb, we have no closed session, just so the public's aware we had it prior to. That's why we opened the meeting early, so we could have that small session early, and the recess came back 6:30, so we have no closed session in the afterward. I will take a motion. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So you adopted, you put forward the motion to adopt.
No,
the
both.
Both of them.
Both?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I stated both. Those are good. Councillor Rabb, do us the honors.
I'd be glad to adjourn.
Adjourned by
Thank you.
Councillor Rabb. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As usual. Okay. Kind and Easter. Cindy,
Is it COVID?
and we'll talk.
Because you can't go hunting and that, you can't have it. Not this one. Not this week.
We'll see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone else, have a great day.